Okay, so hello and welcome to the first day of the Soil4Life conference. My name is Vicky Lovelock and I'm the director of CCIVS, your host for this event today. Soil4Life is a project which is co-financed by the European Commission through the LIFE programme that involves Italian, French and Croatian partners. It's coordinated by our member organisations Legambiente, and it aims to promote the sustainable use of soil as a strategic, limited and non-renewable resource. This conference is taking place over 3 days, and it will highlight the work of CCIVS in capacity building, in the development and delivery of the Soil4Life manifesto, and advocacy and visibility actions related to the protection and management of soil. Through this conference, we really wanted to give voice to grassroots initiatives around the world and to recognise and acknowledge the work of these people who are actively engaged in restoring balance and justice, and who work the land and together regenerate soil and ecosystems, as well as those who volunteer for this essential cause. As such, over 3 days, we'll bring voices from the field, from soil land guardians, from international voluntary service organisations, volunteer voices, youth voices on the state of soil, and today we'll also include representatives from UNESCO and the FAO, an expert on advocacy, a lawyer, and the scientific director of the Soil4Life project from Legambiente. And all of this will be brought to you by our 2 facilitators, Kate and Mercy, to whom I now hand the floor. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Vicky. Hi, my name is Mercy, and I will be facilitating the conference today with my co-facilitator, Kate. Let's say hi.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kate, and together with Mercy, we'll be hosting the live event, introducing speakers, and sharing this exciting day about soil with you. And just before we begin, I'd love to invite everybody who's watching, wherever you are in the world, to just place your 2 feet on the ground or the floor or the whatever you find underneath you. Take a deep breath and just remind ourselves that we came here today because we all care about soil and something about the future of our soils. That title of this next 3 days has sparked your attention or awoken something in your heart to learn more. And I just want to honor the ground below our feet that connects us all, despite looking at digital screens and pixels, that we're actually here because of the ground below our feet, the air that we breathe and the water that runs in our rivers. And so just want to acknowledge that before we begin.
Thank you, Kate. I would like to acknowledge everyone who's joined us today and extend a special welcome to our speakers for the day, whom we're going to hear more of during the course of the conference. The speaker bios will be available, which you can get to click on and have detailed information on the speakers for the day. So first off, I'd like to introduce the agenda for the day. Thank you. As you can see, we have several sessions lined up for the day, and listed there are all the speakers that we're going to have today and the various topics they're going to be talking on. And later in the day, we're going to have breakout rooms where we'll have the opportunity to speak in detail on what was presented by the speakers. And finally, we will have our closing at 3:30 CET. So the duration of the conference is 2 hours. First off, to start off the conference, we're going to watch a video, a Soil4Life video introduction to the conference, which is basically a video introducing us to CCIVS, to IVS, and also talking about the manifesto.
After the First World War, a group of pacifists met in the Netherlands to discuss how to prevent war in the future. One of the pacifists present there, the Swiss engineer Pierre Sarasol, proposed to bring together a group of volunteers coming from different countries, including the countries that had been in war, to reconstruct an almost completely destroyed village in the north of France. Pierre initiated the first project in the small village near Verdun, which had been heavily bombed during the war. After the first experiment, the idea was born, and Pierre did not give up. He initiated more projects in these first years, mainly as a response to natural disasters. He also got in touch with other pacifists to enlarge his knowledge on peace building and non-violent strategies to resolve conflict. One of the people that whom he exchanged letters and opinions was Gandhi. Promoting a culture of peace through intercultural dialogue and mutual respect, through building strong bonds and real friendship, through sharing realities and showing solidarity, and by working together side by side. This has been the goal of more than 100 years. Organizations have set up networks through which they exchange volunteers and work on common projects. These networks can be regional networks such as Alliance for European Voluntary Service Organizations, or NVDA, the Network for Voluntary Development in Asia, or NAVO, the Platform for African Voluntary Service Organizations. Some networks share a common history or ideological background, such as Service Civil International, the organization founded by Pierre Sarasol, the ICYE Federation, or IBO. While each network has its own specificities, they all feel part of the same international voluntary service movement and share the same values and goals.
Soil is where 95% of all our food comes from. Living and biodiverse soil means healthy food and healthy people. Living soils and the millions of microflora and microscopic organisms that form them are not only the foundation of vital and life-sustaining food, but they are also the main source of fuel, fiber, and medicinal products. Healthy soil is essential for all life to thrive. Soil erosion, soil desertification, soil contamination, soil salinization, and many other factors are threatening soil around the world. In recent human history, the quality and care of soil have been largely ignored and misunderstood, and due to mismanagement, short-sightedness, and extractive land practices, soils are under serious threat. The time to restore our earth is now. The time has come to recognize and remember our dependence on living soil and the soil microbiome. For what is essential to life is often invisible to the human eye, and the only recognized and valid in the moment of death. We must protect and regenerate it immediately in order for life to continue, not just the humankind, but all life on Earth. The time to act is now. A group of young soil ambassadors drafted the first draft of the Soil4Life manifesto in October 17, 2019, during an international soil protection and management training led by CCIVS. Within the framework of that soil project, coordinated by Lega Ambiente Onlus, co-financed by the European Commission through the LIFE program. The Soil4Life manifesto is a call to action that was further developed during a 2-year participatory process addressed to global leaders and decision makers to support the transition to a life-sustaining, healthy and thriving environment, of which the ground we walk on is the foundation. The Soil4Life manifesto therefore calls for a soil commons legally based rights for soil and ethical responsibilities, immediate protection and conservation of living soils, updated monitoring of soil, its living organisms and relationships across biologically diverse systems, recognition, reward, and a granted income for small and medium-scale farmers, including indigenous people and peasants. Support for farmers while transitioning to regenerative, organic, chemical-free, natural, and sustainable methods. Then to damaging subsidies, recognition, valuing, and protection of traditional wisdom and sustainable land-based cultures. Urgent urban adaptation, regeneration and damage limitation, support for research and education, soil and the Sustainable Development Goals. Living soil is essential for all life to thrive. With this manifesto, we provide a tool for advocacy, a call to positive action and good practice on our living earth. We recognize and acknowledge the work of people actively engaged in restoring balance and justice, who work the land and together regenerate soil and ecosystems, as well as those who volunteer for the essential cause. We have the right to live, but with this right comes the responsibility to protect and care of all that gives us life. Can there be any greater reason than our very own lives depending on it? Let's join our forces and support the Soil4Life manifesto.
Thank you, Julia. Before I hand over to Kate, who will introduce the first speaker, I'd like to remind us all of the technicalities for the day. So first, please rename yourself in your participant box, starting with your name, country, and the organization represented any. Remember to always keep your microphone muted if you're not speaking. And also note that only our speakers will have the ability to share their video. So we won't be able to see the other participants. And in the chat box, remember to chat responsibly and be respectful. And you can also use this chat to leave any questions and comments that you may have for the moderators and speakers. If you have any technical difficulties, please also use the chat and somebody from the facilitating team will be able to assist you. And a final note to our speakers, please remember that your presentation should be a maximum of 7 minutes to allow 3 minutes for questions. For our participants, you'll be able to ask more questions in the breakout room. So, Kate.
Thank you, Mercy. So I'm just wanting to say thank you again, also not just to our speakers who have joined us, but also to all the participants and viewers that have come into the room, not just in Zoom, but also on YouTube and on Facebook Live. I'm seeing people from Gabon, Ethiopia, Andalusia, and yeah, you're all welcome and thank you for taking the time to join us today and to learn about soil. I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Mwatima Abdallah Juma. She's the manager of Musonga Organic Family Farm in Zanzibar, Tanzania, and she's a rural development expert. And I had the great privilege of meeting Mwatima a few years ago and during a permaculture course. And I'm really grateful that she's taken the time out of her busy farm life and busy schedule to join us here today to talk about this important subject, the future of our soils. So welcome, Mwatima. I'm going to pass to you.
Okay. Hi everybody. Hi, Kate. Let me say that nowadays, since retirement, I've been a person of many titles. So I only choose what is appropriate for me in the particular moment that I feel people will be excited for. But I'm also a chair for Tanzania Organic Agriculture Movement in the mainland, which expand up to Tanzania. I've been given this opportunity to talk about Soil for Future. And it reminds me 2013, when I was in the conference on the Global Soil Workshop in Berlin, also at the same time looking after soil. And I'm glad to see now that in this debate and discussion, we are trying to engage more. We're trying to engage more of the youth to get involved in this issue. Maybe this will help us to make a progress. Reading into the literature and what is going on, we always get frightened in terms of the loss of the soil that is happening. And unfortunately, all of that is happening under the name of development. And everybody is seeing that doing something on the land is going forward for the development, while at the same time is killing our own soils. So to me, my first entry point to get people realize the importance of soil is to let them know that land is not necessarily soil. Because you can have a land and you can be proud of your piece of land, but what you do on that land, that determines if you have a soil or you just have a piece where you are doing something else. And when we look into that direction, we see how much of that land is built roads on it, how much of that land we are building our houses on it, how much of that land we are mining on it. Everything that we are doing on that land, we know we have to think of it like we have lost the soil. And once we lost that soil, then we lost quite a lot of ourselves into it. Because we all know that soil is not only the soul of agriculture. I said this statement in Berlin, but now I even add into it is also the breath of our livelihood, is our breathing point for our own living. So this is how important the soil is. We were told today by Kate to stand on it. I put it down like we tend to forget the purpose of the soil. While we are standing on it, we forgot what is its purpose. We just assume that it is there and that it is going to be there and that it has been given for us to do whatever we want. And this is our fight when it comes into what we are doing in agriculture, to tell people how much you are using those chemicals that destroy the soil and kill the microbes that are in the soil, and all that destruction and turning the soil into a barren soil. And then it's not a soil, it's a piece of land that we have in my discussion. I thought of break down this into 6 levels of how we deal in the soil, in the 6 pillars, but at the same time, how we can be holistic in those 6 pillars of the soil. We can look into the political angle of it, and we can ask ourselves, how much have we had our politicians say something about soil? I think it's very rare. Maybe they will say, we want to leave this land for the investments. The investors are coming. They want to build this hotel in that place. So people should be moved away, and that we build. So we want them to think about soil on a political terms, in what they have in their own political agenda. And we need to see in all the policies, like how we can enshrine soil in our own policies, different policies, because everything is touched by the soil. We talk of a political empowerment of the women, because they are, and we know they are the ones who are at the heart of whatever is happening to the soil. So we want them to be engaged in that. We want to see an overarching policy on the soil. Everybody has a land policy, but that land policy, can we have under the land policy a soil policy? Can you have a policy that we can say, what are the target of the different threats for the soil? What are we putting the counter measurements of getting back the lost soil? What we should do for the loss of our soil organic matter, and what are the regulatory aspect of that? All this needs to be taken into consideration into the political arena. The issue of soil biodiversity, the issue of land degradation, all that together being thought about in line with the soil aspects. We talk about agriculture investment in most of the countries, and I've said most of these countries investment in agriculture, they favor prime potential land for production. So we are venturing that. We are ready to lose the forest because the investor said that he will produce sugarcane, he will produce carrot, or he will produce cabbage or whatever. We do quite a lot of irrigation intensification. We don't do much of water productivity management. By fixing organic matter into the soil, we could really do water harvesting in that place, but we forget about that, and we concentrate in put the canals and get the irrigation done instead of how we can make the soil conserve that water on its own. And once we do that, then we really keep the life of the soil, because we all know, we have seen in the video, soil is a living thing. And we need to get it in our head that this thing is living. We now go too much into single crop compared to the total farm productivity. And the total farm productivity is always associated with the fertility of the soil. And the more the soil is fertile in the organic matter, the more live that soil is. If we go to the economics, we need now to look into the soil on an economic perspective. Whose economy depends on the soil? Maybe if we start talking about it that way, we can bring an attention and say, yes, the economy of smallholder farmers depend on this soil. So what are we doing to keep that economy alive? We also need to see the economic value of the soil and not just look it in a superficial way. What it means when we lost the soil, when we degrade its fertility until it become a barren soil. What are the economic loss in that one? Investment, we need to think of, maybe now we should shift on getting people more interested in increased production and going into the virgin soil. Let's put people investing in degraded soils. I know these are ongoing issues of regeneration and restoration, but it is now still done on a much more kind of voluntary thing. Let's do favor to the earth, but let's put it as an investment, economic investment for the country, and look for investor who will come to Singida in Tanzania, where the soil has been lost by erosion, where there are deep gullies, and help to rebuild that one and get economic value out of it. And give it to these investors in terms of bringing back the value of that land, opportunity to redirect the investment to degraded land will bring value, because once the land is degraded, nobody is there. Everybody is moving to look for another corner and another corner. And then we also talk a lot about ecosystem services. I think we also need to emphasize on economic ecosystem services and get the payment which are associated in ecosystem services indirectly. That will have an impact on that. We talk about the extractive industries, the minings and the likes. What are they doing in terms of the soil? These huge tunnels of the mining and the deposition of, you go to Shinyanga gold mine, you see heaps of this ground soil that I put up on top, and now they are covering another part of the soil, and that's totally destruction. We really need to have a kind of a policy and an economic value in that doing, so that we can generate money while we are also not killing ourselves. The social part of soil is huge. The social part of soil is asking ourselves, who owns the soil? And it can start at the family level. We can do that at a society level. We can look into it at different levels, at a country level, at a regional level, who owns the soil. And if I just give a quick example of the family level, who decide what to be done on that piece of land, which for one, it is soil for short time. For the next, the husband wants to build a house. That is a lost soil for the woman who was getting some of the vegetable for the family. That's a bit of a debate around there. And it could easily...
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, and I'm enjoying so much what you're saying. I just want to say you've got 3 minutes. So.
Okay, so we talk about abuse, but we never talk about soil abuse. Can we really present it like this is a abuse, like a drug abuse, but the soil is not even going around to look for the drug, but we are giving it that one. So we really need to do that. We talk about the opportunity I just said about the degraded abandoned land. So why don't we decide the opportunity to relocate the degraded land and abandoned land to reduce this social inequality and give it to those people who need to utilize it? It's an issue of existing knowledge to overcome the thinking that once you have your soil degraded, it's lost forever. and ensuring that those who are responsible for degrading are paying for that. I think for the soils, we have a lot to learn, and I don't even have an example on a technical side. I'm sure that the technology can be used in one way or another. The quick one which comes to me is if we have an equipment which keep on telling us on a monthly basis how much of the soil we have lost. You open your computer, you see, okay, this has been lost in this region, in this country, in this village, and this is what is happening, and this what has to be done. Then maybe that will alert people. We have to think of, and the youth people are now in the technology. They have to think of a way what can be used to, within their technological know-how that can save the soil. I know of the environment, everybody is good in that one, because destroying the environment, we are destroying our soil. So we are talking about the carbon marketing, still complicated for our smallholder farmers, still needs people to understand, still need to trickle down so that people can see benefit of using their farms as an organic farm, or as a farm that is using a live soil rather than a killing soil, and how they can be compensated on that one. Get people to understand the soil organic matter influence on that, and the issues of erosion and the like. We still also have legal issues, and I will want to say that who is fighting for the rights of the soil? They are silent. They need that one. They need people to fight for the rights of the soil. The moment nobody is talking about their rights, but we know that someone has to come out and say, this soil here is crying. You are killing it. Stop doing that. And on the last point, I would want to say, let's bring emotion into the discussion on soil, so that we can give a soil a voice, and make sure we use the social media in making local people voice heard. Soil is a stronghold of our society, but we need to give a voice, and we need to give it as a very emotional voice into the soil. Today, Kate has told me to stop here, but I could have given a very emotional, and I want people to leave this meeting crying, but I want people to be discussing here, instead of crying, wipe with our ears, our eyes with the back of our hand, and say, now enough is enough. Soil has the right. Let's work on it. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Dr. Martima. And I'm so sorry that we have so many speakers here today, because I feel like each one of you I would like to hear from for the full 2-hour conference, as there's so much wisdom in the room. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing in the point of emotion and the voice of the soil, which is a big intention also for this conference, is to give voice to those that are working on behalf of nature and behalf of soil. And as I know that you are, thank you. Mercy?
Yes, thank you. So now we're going to watch a video, and we were so fortunate that we were able to gather reports from young voices and the state of soil. And during the duration of the conference, we're going to show this in 2 videos. So for starters, let's have a look at the first video.
To talk about the challenges that's affecting soil in our area, there are quite a few we could talk about. So the major one can be the use of chemical fertilizers, or the increasing trend of commercial farming. And another thing, or another challenge that we see for now, is fallowing of land is increasing threat to our soil. It's a good thing as well, because in those land forest is growing up. But another thing is there is more erosion in the period of first 2 years, which I think is a bigger problem. Our village lies in a very hilly slope, So the problem of soil erosion mainly by wind and by water is a very challenging problem for farmers, because we use compost, we use different manures, but it's swept away or washed out by water or by wind, and the production is not that satisfactory, let's say. And another is now more and more trend of commercial farming is growing up, and people are using small to some machineries which is doing soil compaction, or the use of chemical fertilizer is also aiding in the process of soil compaction and nutrient exhaustion. So I think this for use of chemical fertilizers, fallowing of the land, soil erosion and compaction and nutrient exhaustion are the major challenges affecting soil in our area.
Some of the challenges that we are facing in our community are due to unsustainable human practices such as deforestation and poor agronomic practices. Such poor agronomic practices include the continuous application of poisonous chemicals that are killing the microbes in the soil. This has led to a decrease in soil capacity, which directly leads to a decrease in crop yields. Other poor agronomic practices, such as stream bank cultivation, are leading to the siltation of rivers. Then we also have a serious challenge of human activities, such as brick making activities, which is common in our area. It is leading to the formation of gullies and also adding on to the deposition of excess soils in our rivers.
Villana es un pueblo que surge mediante la actividad productiva de una empresa conocida como La Forestal. La Forestal fue una compañía monopólica que se asentó en la región del Chaco santafesino entre fines del siglo XIX y principios del siglo XX y explotó las principales reservas de quebracho colorado del mundo. Podemos afirmar de que la empresa La Forestal tuvo un impacto medioambiental negativo en el territorio del Chaco santafesino. Podemos mencionar la deforestación y el desmonte y la eliminación de gran parte de los montes nativos de estos territorios, la desertificación de los suelos. Eso generó la pérdida en la capacidad de absorción de agua que tiene la tierra, la reducción de gran parte de la fauna y de la flora nativa, ¿no? Entonces, todas estas consecuencias o estos impactos negativos hacen de que todos los procesos ecológicos se trastoquen y la naturaleza o el medio ambiente se vea en la necesidad de readaptarse, ¿no?, a los nuevos tiempos que corren después de esa explotación irracional que realiza una empresa.
So that's a lot of information and a lot of opinions about the state of soil. And Dr. Martima, you were saying that you'd like to make things emotional about soil. And when I hear from those different diverse youth observing just what's happening to soil in their localities, there is a part of myself that feels very emotional and wants to cry. Yeah, so on that note, we're going to go further into the story of soil and particularly around the context in the European Union. So I'm very pleased to introduce everybody to Damiano De Simimi. He's the scientific director of the Soil4Life project, and he has studies in chemistry, biology, and a PhD in food biotechnology. Damiano was the president of Legambiente between 2006 and 2015. And he has subsequently been the promoter of the European Citizens Initiative, People for Soil. Today, he's a member of the National Secretariat of Legambiente and among the national coordinators of the Scientific Committee with responsibility for soil issues. So Damiano is going to be speaking with us today about the state of soil in the European Union. Thank you for joining us, Damiano.
Hi. Thanks for the introduction, and I now going to share my presentation. Obviously, something's wrong, and I don't see my presentation now. Oops.
Take your time.
My program that doesn't work. Okay. Here. Okay. Well, the topic of my presentation should be a little bit different in the last days, but something occurred in Europe and in our continent, so it is not impossible to speak about the not peaceful context in which we are living. The war in Ukraine has broken into Europe, and while thousands of people die, suffer, and fight in a territory that has become a theater of an armed conflict, the world is dealing with the impacts of wars, also with respect to the supply chains of essential goods, among which are the product of those soils, the black soils, you can see here, at the churn of them, that are between the more fertile soil in the world, extremely fertile and productive, but extremely fragile and susceptible to degradation, which extend across Eurasia in a strip of lands located at the latitudes of Ukraine. One can ask how many of these soils will be seeded this spring in the place where the war is occurring, and how much damage will be done to the global agri-food system by the war. Consider that in addition to feeding its own population, Ukraine productions generate exports of grains and oils for the world market, and in particular for north of Africa and the Middle East. And it is not the only problem. This war broke out in a particularly critical moment for the world food system, already strongly stressed both by pandemics and by growing difficulties linked to extreme climatic phenomena, linked to a worrying scenario of climate change. Let's just think of the dramatic effect of the drought that last year hit Canada, reducing by 60% the production of wet crops. Well, we must say that never, like today, healthy soil are a key element for the resilience of a food system, and we can appreciate this message just now in a very complicated circumstance in which multiple shocks are affecting the food system worldwide. Well, this is the unexpected context in which the European Union is beginning its journey towards its first soil law, responding to demands from science and the civil society that multiplied over the last decade. We can speak about the 2030 agenda, obviously, with its very challenging target of the SDG 15, land degradation neutral world to pursue within 2030, but also the revision of the World Soil Charter in the last few years, or also important documents by the expert panels working for the United Nations programs on environment, on the IPBES and the IPCC, who published very relevant reports in the last year, in which soil has a very central, pivotal role. In Europe, when we started with our project, our Soil4Life project, the situation was not good for soil policies. Many expert groups spoke about the lack of food policy in Europe, and very relevant gaps in which soil was involved. We must also say that in the first years of this century, Europe attempted to have a soil regulation, soil policy, very effective. This was what in Europe, the European institution tried to discuss soil directive, but it was not possible due to the opposition from member states that strongly opposed to consider soil as a provider of services such as food security or climate adaptation and mitigation, that are services that move across the national borders. The principle of the national sovereignty then proved stronger than the recognition of soil as a common good. Well, the game changer was in 2019 with the new Commission and the European Green Deal ambition, in which soil had a very, very relevant role. Not just between the first strategies of the European Green Deal, there is a strategy from farm to fork with very important effects on soil, because the strategy for Europe is asked to reduce the use of pesticides, to reduce the use of chemical fertilizers, and to reduce the loss of nutrients due to excessive use of fertilizers, reduce the use of antimicrobials for farmed animals, or increase up to 25% within 2030 the quota of organically farmed in EU. So in 5 months ago, on November 2021, Europe published its European Soil Strategy for 2030 with a very meaningful title, Reaping the Benefits of Healthy Soil for People, Food, Nature and Climate. So the lesson that soil is not just a property good, it's not just a national object, there was a relevant awareness about the significance of soil as a common good. This strategy sets a vision of and the target to achieve healthy soils by 2050 with a concrete action within the 2030, and sets out a framework of concrete measures for the protection, restoration and sustainable use of soil in synergy with other European Green Deal policies. But more important for us, it announces a new soil health law by 2023 to ensure a level playing field and the high level of environmental and health protection, complementing also another law that is the nature restoration law. Well, the project, our project Soil4Life, worked a lot on building diffuse awareness on soil protection, and now we are working to support the consultation about the proposal of a soil health law with a position paper that is available, because we think that there is a common narrative to be developed and discourse that holds together the reason of the economy, of the society, and of environmental protection within the narrative that sets out the challenges and opportunities opened up by the European Green Deal, but which requires clear and shared cornerstones on the side of regulatory policies, so as not to become an abstract narrative. We want a soil law now. This is why we call for European leadership on soil policies, and this is also the title of our position in the document we prepared for the Commission's consultation that is presently in progress on the soil health law, in which main issues is also the protection of soil as a common good. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Damiano. We actually have a question for you in the chat from Andres. And what they ask is, hello, Dr. Damiano. It's interesting that Europe is concerned about soil health. In developing countries like Mexico, rural people are more concerned about getting the money they need to live than about the quality of the agricultural soils. What do you think?
It is not so different in Europe, unfortunately. In these days in which there is a strong increase of the price of food commodities, there is a very, very strong discussion in Europe to go back from the Green Deal and to disapply, do not apply the measures of the Farm to Fork strategy. So this is the battle is to increase the awareness of there are goods such as the soil which value go overcome the private interests and the sovereignty principle. Soil is a provider of ecosystem services of which the whole of humanity needs.
Thank you. And for anyone else who has questions, you'll be able to address this in the breakout rooms. Unfortunately, we can't get through all the questions right now because we are limited with time. Next, I'm going to introduce the next speaker. I'm honored to introduce Kate Curtis, who also happens to be the co-facilitator for today. Kate is passionate about soil, and Kate is passionate about living soil, permaculture, ecological education, ecosystem restoration, and nature connection for positive change. She's currently growing a nonprofit project in South Africa called Green Hearted, which supports community gardens and food sovereignty. She facilitates various permaculture and agroforestry courses, as well as sustainable food production and soil workshops. She forms part of the team for CCIVS for climate justice and has broad practical experience restoring soil in diverse climates. And today, Kate will be sharing with us the formal presentation on the manifesto. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Mercy. Feels strange to hear all that soil work sitting in a in a room looking at a screen, but I am very passionate about soil, and I'm very pleased to present today the Soil4Life manifesto, which has been a project that we've been working on for the last 3 years. And I realized that listening to Damiano's presentation gave me great hope to hear of all these milestone achievements in the European Union's context. And I see that the Soil4Life manifesto can be something that complements these milestones and hopefully also reinforces that not just the European Union is needing these shifts, but on a global and local level, this is what people are waking up to. So I'm going to share my screen. So sorry, I've gone to the last page. So the Soil4Life manifesto is part of the Soil4Life larger project, and we drafted the first version of this during a soil management and conservation training at the end of 2019. And that group of people decided to say, the very first line is a collaboration by concerned people of the world. So that's very important, that the manifesto tries to hold a voice for all concerned citizens on the subject of soil. And why a manifesto? We were discussing just prior to this conference how when I started to do research for the manifesto, I found countless numbers of articles since before I was born, expressing these same concerns around living soils, around soil degradation, soil loss, soil health. It's not something new. And so the manifesto really is coming at a time when the urgency of acknowledging living soils is becoming more and more apparent, because our soil health is directly related to human survival and our well-being. It's life for our future generations as well, and it must be protected and regenerated. In order for life to continue, this finite resource needs to be recognized as such, and more than just finite, this living resource. I think soil science is just very recently, in comparison to the rest of sciences, discovering that soil is a very complex living system that we actually aren't fully aware of yet, and we aren't fully aware of how it functions. So this manifesto recognizes that and is also a tool for advocacy. It's a call to positive action and good practice on our living earth. And we recognize and acknowledge the work of people that are actively engaged in restoring balance and justice. We also want to honor the people that do work the land already and together regenerate soil and ecosystems, as well as the people that are volunteering for this cause, not just to make it about policy, but to also say that the technology and the strategies are already in place and people are already applying them. So as I said, the manifesto was drafted in late October 2019. And as you saw in the video that was presented earlier, it was formed by a group of young soil ambassadors, and later other people working in multiple fields, from small grassroots organizations, university researchers, lawyers. It addresses global leaders and decision makers to support the transition to a life-sustaining, healthy and thriving environment, of which the ground we walk on is the foundation. And once the first draft was established, it was placed online in an interactive document where comments, feedback, inputs was open to the public. We disseminated that and advertised for input. And we also invited certain experts to give their opinion and participate in its development. The manifesto is now published and it's collecting signatures. And I'd love to see in the chat after I've finished sharing my screen who's actually read and signed the manifesto in this room. And if you haven't, I'd like to encourage you to do that. So the participatory process, just to have you have a look at it, was very simple. It was a Google Doc that people could comment on, and it was developed in that way, which is how technology is really a blessing in these developmental processes, especially it happened during the time when the world was really locked down. And so it was amazing to be able to continue the project in this way. It's important to note that without the volunteers who put their time and input and expertise into the manifesto, it wouldn't have been possible. A call was put out also to the International Voluntary Services Network. And during an online work camp, I think it was about 14 or 15 volunteers translated the manifesto completely voluntarily into 10 different languages. So the manifesto is now available in English, French, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, Chinese, Italian, Indonesian, Portuguese, and German. And CCIVS is open to any other volunteers that would like to put the manifesto into your own language. We're missing a lot of languages here, many minority languages are missing, and we're open to anyone else that would like to volunteer to do that, to send it, to come forward and do that for your own language group. So we've already seen in the video what the Soil4Life manifesto calls for. These calls are in response to the major threats that face our soil at the moment on this planet. So we're going to hear from the FAO later, and we've already heard from some youth activists, and we've just heard from Damiano. And Matima also explained to us how our soils are really under threat. There's a massive loss of soil. I like Matima's suggestion that maybe we need to develop an app that reminds us every day exactly how much soil has been lost in which particular region of our planet. And so these calls are asking not only to prevent that loss, but also to regenerate, to acknowledge people who are already regenerating, and to end this unfair subsidizing that encourages this loss of soil in our farming practices, in industrial practices, as well as calling for a different way of developing our urban spaces, which have a massive impact on living soils. So, the Soil4Life manifesto can be used for advocacy if your country is signed into the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. The manifesto is in support directly and in alignment with the goal number 2 of zero hunger, 13 of climate action, 15 life on land, and sustainable cities and communities. So you can use the manifesto in your advocacy if your country is aligned to these. Hold your decision makers accountable for their promises. And just to show you that many different organizations international have signed the manifesto, as well as over 440 individuals. And we're looking to strengthen that by adding more voices to the call so that it can be delivered to world leaders and be used as a powerful tool for change. So as the manifesto says, that the time to act is now, not just through these documents, which give very powerful voice, but also on the ground in organic matter, reducing chemicals, converting our cities to green spaces, and speaking on behalf of Earth. Raising awareness is very important. And the manifesto tries to encompass all that and provide a document that I hope will be useful to people watching today. It's accessible online. The links are here. We'll share the links in the chat at the end of the conference. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I really love to see from everybody who's in the room today. You could just raise your hands if you've read and signed the manifesto. I see one of our translators is in the room. Actually, there's Daisy. I believe she did the Mandarin Chinese. Great. Okay. Brilliant. So if you haven't signed the manifesto yet, I encourage you to read it. And if you agree with it and you understand it and you think it can be useful to you, please add your name, and as well as sharing it in your different organizations and your networks, and use it for advocacy as much as you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate. It's great to see that we have several number of people who have read the manifesto, and also people who are interested in, signing up. And I've seen a question from Erica. What can we as a large collective do to reward community-based organizations that are regenerating the soil? The South African government and global prisoners and Greek corps bloc, media and philanthropists.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Erica. I think social media is a really powerful platform to go against things being blocked and the lobbying. I think as a larger collective, the thing is to spread the word on the ground. I think raising awareness is very important. Giving recognition and acknowledgement to those that aren't working with chemicals is a very important place to start. And perhaps approaching leaders, local decision makers with this document in education, in a sense, is also another way to start approaching these blocks, because often these blocks come from a lot of economic pressure or business as usual mentality, or in my opinion, sometimes it's just from a place of ignorance. And so I would say gently but firmly, if you have a collective with many like-minded individuals together, writing campaigns, approaching your decision makers, sharing information with them. There's plenty of information available on the harmful effects of chemicals, the harmful effects of soil sealing, the relationship between soil microbes and human health. In fact, in the manifesto, there's a few links to articles. And keep going and work together. And yeah, share your stories, share your WhatsApp groups. I hope that answers your question. Those are small ideas from myself. Tomorrow in the Land Guardians Conference, we'll hear from other earth activists that are working on the ground for change despite challenges. And hopefully there'll be more inspiring stories there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you. I think from your presentation, a lot of people have been inspired to want to read more about the manifesto and also sign up for it. Kate will also be moderating a breakout room later. So if any of you would like to talk to her further on this, you can always discuss it there. Next, we're going to watch the second video on the state of soil.
And the landscape and soils here in northern Germany were created during the last ice age, so it's very fertile land, and 70% of the total land here in northern Germany is used for agricultural uses, from which most is industrial production practices, and only 6% ecological practices. But it doesn't really matter which practices they use. It's all mainly monoculture. And so the main challenges here are the high exposure to wind, so wind erosion, but also water erosion, with a lot of precipitation. And with the climate change, it's estimated that we get even more precipitation in winter and less precipitation in summer. So spillover in the one part of the year and drought in the other half of the year, and we actually, that's what's happening right now already. We had a lot of water, a lot of rain in February, and a lot of spillover, so it's very wet at the moment. Let's see how the summer is going to be.
The soil in Palestine historically has been very, very fertile, and we come from a population of farmers, but due to some reasons we have lost the quality of the soil, such as monoculture, being away from the land, heavy grazing, which led to erosion, also the Israeli occupation taking our land and our resources. So many reasons, also urbanization, building houses in agricultural land. We at Umsman Farm, we try to regenerate our soil by doing natural farming, syntropic farming, doing our own compost, covering with straw, and we do heavy planting of trees because we believe that soil is life and we depend on it very much.
Thank you, Julia. And now, as we go into the session with our next speaker, I'd like to introduce him. He's Bernard Combs. And Bernard Combs supports UNESCO's activities on education for sustainable development, that is ESD. He coordinates the, He coordinates the implementation of the ESD for 2030 priority action areas on accelerating sustainable solutions at local level and on empowering and mobilizing youth through capacity and partnership building to foster local networks and platforms for learning and multi-stakeholder collaboration, and to reinforce cooperation on communication, education, and public awareness in the areas of biodiversity, water, oceans, cities, and sustainable lifestyles. He's also the education sector focal point for biodiversity at UNESCO and the focal point for the Earth Charter. So today, he's going to be talking to us about education and learning for planet and people. Welcome, Bernard.
Thank you. It's great to be here and be able to share some ideas or thoughts about education and learning. That's why to the manifesto, I would add SDG 4, quality education, because you need education to be able to work on the other SDGs you mentioned. But I think also it would be good to also add SDG 12 on sustainable consumption and production, because the soil is where we grow our food. This is where we use it to produce what helps us build houses and many other things. So just 2 suggestions. Let me quickly give you an overall picture. So why education, why learning on some of these issues? There's so many challenges our world is facing. Of course, climate change is a key one, biodiversity, pollution, diseases, inequalities in all shapes and forms. So we have to find a way to change our learning patterns and our education systems. We need to change the learning environments. If you say soil, I'm working on soil, and you go to a director of school and say, oh, that's for the science teacher. We say, no, it's not just for the science teacher. Any teacher under any subject can talk about soil. The other thing is that in most cases, you will have a class about soil in a primary school, but most likely the kids will not be taken outside to actually put their hands in the soil. So definitely we have to change the way we teach, the way we do that. The other thing is that we have to improve the learning content on what are we teaching about soil. Our friend from Tanzania gave quite a few items that should be included in what we should teach about the soil. We should also look at learning outcomes. Unfortunately, most education systems are still focused on at the end of a certain number of years, you need to get a good grade on certain subjects, rather than do you actually know what to do when confronted with the complexity of things such as soil. And then finally, the other thing is that we need to be able to change and transform ourselves and our societies to be able to have a better relationship with nature and with the soil. We have launched a framework for education for sustainable development until 2030 with some key features. One of them is about the role of education and learning in terms of addressing all 17 of the SDGs, and in particular showing the interlinkages between them. Another key feature is calling on country leadership. We as UN can call for certain things. Volunteers can call for also things, citizens, but government needs to countries need to take a leading role. And then finally, the big one is focusing on transformation. We need to see how can we transform things? How can we move to different ways of thinking about stuff? Our roadmap and our framework is 5 priority areas. As you heard, I'm in charge of 2 of those, youth and basically local level. We also have a priority on training educators, changing learning environments. So if a school is going to teach about soil, it has to become a school project. It can't just be in the science class. And also changing policies, including education in sustainability policies, but also putting sustainability into education policies. So where do we stand? Last year, we did a number of surveys of curriculums. We found out that, about half of them made no reference to climate change or environment. This needs to definitely improve. And when they did make some reference to environmental issues, it was very minimal or just on the surface. We also conducted with Education International, the network of teachers union around the world, a survey with nearly 60,000 teachers who responded on the question, are you ready to teach climate change? Are you ready to teach sustainability issues? And in terms of climate, they all said, yes, very important. We have to teach about that. But then they said, well, we don't always feel confident teaching about it, because when we were in teacher training school, we didn't hear much about that. And we're not quite sure how to explain, how to take action. This is about climate change, similar results on some of the other issues. And I would say if we asked those 60,000 about soil and teaching about soil, we would have possibly similar answers, or possibly like, I have no clue, what should I do? We also last year had a world conference, which came out with a declaration in which we said that putting environment and climate action as core curriculum component was key and should be done right away. We followed that by, at the pre-COP in Milan, a dialogue between youth and ministers, for ministers to listen to youth, it's what they were asking, and for youth to get a sense of what ministers can actually do. And we've also did a ministerial meeting of education and environment ministers in Glasgow at the COP on climate, saying ministries of education, ministries of environment have to work hand in hand to improve learning and education on sustainability. So we probably should also bring Ministry of Agriculture, since we're talking about soil in this case. We need to act now. We need to transform learning so that we can develop a better relationship between ourselves and the planet. We need to make sure we interconnect all the different SDGs. They all are related to each other. You can't just say, I'm just working on the SDG on water. No, everything is interconnected. We need to teach that, we need to learn that, and we need to work together on that. It's very simple. I'm repeating some of what my previous speakers said. We need to act now, we need to learn now. So in terms of soil, it means that we need to go out there. To paraphrase my patron saint, Saint Bernard de Clairvaux, going out into the forest will teach you more than actually learning in books. And to paraphrase also another thinker, who said, go out to nature, it will help you learn a lot. In terms of soil, it's also about taking actions on your own. I think most of you might not know, but at UNESCO here in Paris, right under my office window, we have a vegetable garden. It seems to be a bit strange, but it's part of, if we are teaching and learning about, or telling people that you need to teach and learn about sustainability and environment, we as an organization need to do it ourselves. And this is a very concrete way of doing it. With this vegetable garden, we have activities there. Colleagues can purchase bags of vegetables and can actually discover the diversity of plants, but also of the soils that they grow in. And I mean, this is a very short, so for those of you who want to continue discussions, we have a LinkedIn group. I encourage you to join it. Thank you very much for listening. And I look forward to the discussion in the breakout session.
Thank you. That was quite insightful. And I like the echoing of the message that we can take individual action and we can lead by example. Now, I don't see any questions in the chat. So if anyone wants to discuss this further, or any questions has questions to Bernard about what the UNESCO is doing in this area, he will also be in a breakout room and you'll have the opportunity to talk to him. I'd like to pass over to Kate, who will be introducing our next speaker.
Thank you, Mercy. And yeah, just to echo, thank you, Bernard. I love the parts that you finished with on embodiment. and how important it is. If we want to change the soil, we need to start thinking like soil in a more interconnected, relational way, rather than an extractive, only me way. So thank you for bringing that in, thinking like a forest or thinking like the soil. And someone who knows a lot about soil and communicating, our next speaker is Isabel Verbeeker. She's the Land and Water Officer at the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the UN, the FAO. She joined the FAO in 2002 and the Global Soil Partnership Secretariat in 2012. Isabel is responsible for the International Year of Soils in 2015, the communication campaigns, and largely involved in the World Soil Day. And today she's going to be speaking to us about raising the soil profile. So thank you very much for joining us, Isabel.
Thank you very much, Kate. Thank you, merci. And a big thank you to the organizers, the Soil4Life conference and the CCIVS for inviting us to present today the work we do at the GSP. So I will share my screen. Okay. So my name is Isabel. I'm responsible for the communication portfolio at FAO GSP. And with a few slides that I prepare, I will try to give you a broad overview of what the GSP has achieved over the last 10 years, together with its partners in terms of awareness raising and advocacy. So, okay. Well, now there is a strong interest on the ecosystem services provided by soil, but before 2012, there was some lack, a void on soil governance at global level. Soil investment was low, soil degradation was and is still a threat. Soil information was outdated at different levels, weakening of national soil institution, and soil didn't have a voice on the agenda. So FAO members in 2012, they acknowledged that soil constitutes the foundation for agriculture, and the GSP, the Global Soil Partnership, was established as an interactive, responsive, and voluntary mechanism open to government, institution, and any type of partner. So the mission is clear, is to promote sustainable soil management for all. And the first year, I won't go into detail because we've seen that a lot. It's very clear soil is alive, is a hidden resource, and it's not renewable. So we need to take good care of it. So we start spreading the word with a message, the message from a high level person, which is a UN Secretary General in 2014. He mentioned clearly on the first World Soil Day celebration that without healthy soils, life on Earth would be unsustainable. We continue. You see here a message from the EU Commissioner using the official visual for the World Soil Day 2014 and the IYS that was launched also. And so that was very important. That's how the message starts to be spread. Two important United Nations resolutions that were adopted by the General Assembly in 2014, which officialized the World Soil Day celebration and the International Year of Soil. So soil is where food begins. Everybody knew that. But we wanted to draw the attention on all the other ecosystem services and functions that soils offer. So you can see here the key one. So it's not only a source of food, but it provides a lot of services. So this is another infographic, also an important infographic that state the SDG in terms of soil. So we also advocate for including soil into the SDG, and indeed 17 goals. Of the 17 goals, 4 contains targets directly related to soils. So the GSP, how does it work? It has an intergovernmental setting. It's composed by partners. I will come on that later. It's guided and advised by the ITPS, which is a technical panel on soil composed of 27 soil experts around the globe. It's facilitated by the GSP Secretariat where I work, and it also works through 7 regional soil partnerships. So the partners, it's FAO, all member nations, 2 associate member, and 1 member organization, which is the European Union. So there are 168 national focal points. They're making the liaison between the nation, the countries, and the GSP, and they are directly appointed officially by FAO members. There are also over 500 GSP partners worldwide. They come from a wide range of institution, private company, farmer association. So if you are not a partner and you're interested to become a partner, please join us. You can find the form to fill on the GSP website. And also it's composed of a wide range of experts contributing to special working groups, like we have one on pollution, on soil biodiversity, and several technical networks. You can find the list here and also on the GSP website. So, so GSP and soils were indeed brought to the plenary assembly. The COACs, they are all important bodies within FAO, the FAO Council, the FAO Conference. And here you can see some pictures of FAO members and GSP partners discussing and making decisions during the annual GSP plenary assembly. So the GSP operates through 7 regional soil partnerships that work with FAO office and national entities. And this regional perspective also helped to adapt the activities and the priority based on the regional from a regional perspective, let's say. So back in 2015, the first report, this is the first status of the world soil resources was launched. It's the first time that was prepared at such a level. It was saying that indeed 33% of the soil are degraded. It compiles the work of over 200 soil scientists coming from 60 countries. And a number of soil threats were identified in this report, and that's what helped us to define the working area. So those you can see here, the different GSP areas of work. I'm focusing on the one awareness raising, which I'm coordinating. We are very active on the ground, but this is not part of my presentation. Also, I'm not a soil scientist, so I'm just focusing here today on awareness raising. So World Soil Day is the celebration where everybody can celebrate. So on 5th of December, I put here purposely the a nice picture illustrating the first World Soil Day celebration in Thailand. You can see the late King Bhumibol here in the center, because he was a promoter, a motor for the resolution, the UN's resolution to be adopted. And actually 5th of December coincide with his birthday. So you can here clearly see the growing trend of number of celebration. 2014, there were 42 celebration. To 2021, almost 800 celebration in over 100 countries. So I've just put here some statistics of the last year outreach figure. They are very important. They are the highest ever, more than 600 articles in the media. Material translate, we prepare a lot of communication material. We translate them in the 6 FAO languages and more on demand. We receive a lot of proposals from all, and we translate them and make them available on the website. 3 million pages during the World Soil Day. So this is the traffic of all all the website that we have. World Soil Day was trending on Twitter on 5th of December, and you see a very impressive number and the video also that we prepare. So World Soil Day over the year, each year it focuses on one theme, on one topic. 2016 was soils and pulses, in 18 soil pollution, then it was soil erosion, soil biodiversity, and last year it was soil salinization. Okay, on the top of that, so World Soil Day is about involving, engaging the general public. We also organize every year a global symposium. They are science policy symposiums that focus on some threads. So you can see that each symposium actually matches the World Soil Day theme. So it allows to focus the attention of both the general public and the science on one particular thread. So communication toolkit. So indeed, we always try to prepare target-oriented material. So you can see here some screenshots. Everything is available on the website, of course, for free in many languages. I will show you after how to access those. Those are just some screenshots of some of the posters. This is a compilation of just some of the pictures that we receive. We have an open Flickr gallery where all organizers send us the photos. So I invite you to go on the World Soil Day website and check for the Flickr link, and then enjoy the beautiful pictures of kids and institutes that organize a World Soil Day. So we also have two important, one is platform, one is a Glinka Prize, and the other is a King Boomable World Soil Day Award. So the Glinka has the objective to honor individual or organization that are committed to solve soil degradation problem, while the King Boomable praise the base celebration held in the framework of the previous World Soil Day campaign. So, okay, so we communicate. World Soil Day is on the 5th of December, but we try to communicate during all the year because soil has to be celebrated 365 days a year. So we communicate, but how? We try to engage citizens. We organize a lot of public contests. Heart and Soil, it was an artistic exhibition that was organized here in FAO, some video contest, Greening the Future, that was a photo contest showing how to cover your soil to stop soil erosion. Last year, the poster contest from kids to kids. So it was kids explaining to other kids how salinization affects their daily life. And a soil pollution photo contest. And we did many more. I just put some here. Okay, we try also, as we've been doing here today with all those super nice video. It's important. It's now events are all virtual, so it can be static. So it's very important to be creative. We try to create songs, and of course, all is pro bono, but we try to make the event as joyful as possible with animation, quiz, and so on. Yeah, here I just put one book contest that worked really nicely. That was on soil biodiversity in 2020. We received 97 books from 75 countries. They were all amazing. It was heartbreaking to select the top 10 that we compile into a book. They are all also on the World Soil Day website. And how we reach, I'm almost done. Huh? So how we reach the audience. So we have a newsletter. If you're not registered, I invite you to register to the newsletter. That way you will be kept updated on all the publication, events, webinar. So please subscribe. We try to engage also in social media. We post daily on Facebook, Twitter. We also use LinkedIn, the FAO corporate channels, so please join us. And finally, being in the news, that's very important. Social media, of course, are fundamental. Outreach figures are high, but soil and soil science need to be in the news so that it goes beyond the typical usual circle of scientists. And otherwise, soil remain with scientists, why that's very important that it reach the general public. Yeah. So whenever a product, a new report is launched, we strive to have a press release that trigger a lot. And you see here during the last World Soil Day, over 630 articles reach 1.50 billion people. So webinar and trainings, we organize many webinars, they're all free. We focus on capacity development, mainly on digital soil mapping, soil analysis, and soil spectroscopy in 2021, and more are planned this year. So please join us. Website, you see here on the left, the GSP website, the FAO Soils portal, the World Soil Day, then each symposium also has a website, so it has a wealth of information. I invite you to check them. This is just how to access all the resources that I showed the infographic. So under resources, you have a link to publication, multimedia, animation, communication material, soil doctor poster. This is a very important program that we have on the ground. I have 8 minutes, so I cannot present all the projects that we have on the ground, but that's a very important one. And so please check our website. This is just some of, some screenshot of publication. The video, you can follow us also us on YouTube. We prepare a lot of short video animation, again, focusing, you see here, keep soil alive, protect soil biodiversity, 6 actions to keep soil alive, stop soil erosion. So we have a lot of very short animation. And I reach now the end of my presentation, so I invite you to follow us, and please don't hesitate to contact me for any question. I would be very happy to reply. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you for all that. And now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who is Dr. Saskia. And Dr. Saskia Vermeulen, I hope I say that correctly, is a reader in law at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. Her research focuses on property theory, including examining the future of the commons and the common heritage principle across different landscapes and areas, including deep seabed and outer space. Her research also focuses on examining how resources such as soils can be protected through more progressive anti-property regimes, such as the idea of guardianship, and how this has been applied to rivers and ecosystems within the framework of rights of nature. She's published widely on these topics and is currently also experimenting on reframing property law as an aesthetic praxis. Welcome, Dr. Saskia.
Thank you very much, Mercy, and thank you very much, Kate, for inviting me to be here with all of you. It's really exciting. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? I'm just trying to see if I can get it into presentation mode. Yeah, okay, here we go. So yeah, thanks everyone. And it's been really interesting to listen to all of your talks, and a lot of the points that I would like to very briefly touch upon have already been mentioned by all these wonderful speakers who came before me, making links to rights of nature, but also the emotions, also how to give voice to the soils, and hopefully by looking into 2 particular aspects that I would like to highlight in my talk around soil commons and rights of nature, I may be able to give a bit more inspiration, but probably also raising a lot of new questions as well that hopefully we can dig further into. So my short presentation focuses particularly on Article 1 of that wonderful soil manifesto, and particularly a soil commons. And it's already been mentioned a couple of times, so I'm not going to read the article in full again, but it just touching upon some of the issues that I find really interesting and overlaps, I think, with a lot of movements in law where there is a recognition that our environmental laws, although we have achieved already quite a lot, and I'm thinking here, for example, about the Convention on Biological Diversity and some of the work that the FAO has been doing, has been really wonderful. But in the sort of academic legal circles, there is a movement growing that we should actually think more about thinking differently about law, and particularly environmental law, and that maybe we've been a bit too anthropocentric, and that we explored our environmental laws and biodiversity laws, etc., too much from a sort of human-centric perspective, and that we may need a really big paradigm shift. And I think that's a really interesting debate that can feed into what we're doing here with the Soil Manifesto as well. So I really like in this particular article, this idea that it thinks about the whole kind of relations that exist between the microbes, and we can also extend that this sort of entanglements of how we as humans are also entangled and linked to other webs of life like microbes, etc. I also would like to maybe put the emphasis on the kind of legal responsibility for leaders and decision makers, and that also includes, I think, the academic scholars, the community that I'm part of, that we need to, I think for us, there is also a kind of moment that we need to act now and take our responsibility, that we maybe transform our legal system and really get this big paradigm shift, that we think differently about our environmental laws and how we can extend that to soil commons. So starting with soil commons, and I think it's been mentioned already a couple of times that property is a really difficult and ambiguous kind of concept that interferes as well with our soil sustainability and trying to protect ourselves as a living being. And if we think about agriculture, and I also really love the first speaker making that relationship between land and soils and how these two are very different things. And for me, I think that notion of commodification and how we start treating our soils, and by extension, maybe land, as a commodity that can be exploited, and often leading to dispossessions of local communities getting access to their soils, but also, I guess, a dispossession of nature itself and the microbes and all these wonderful creatures that are making our soils livable beings. So I think the soil commons for me is a really important framework where we start thinking differently about governing how we are interacting with our soils and moving away from a property rights system. And often when we think about protection, we sort of embed it in a kind of rights-based perspective. Whilst there is nothing wrong with the rights-based perspective, there is also some particular issues with it. And I think that relationship between rights and responsibilities are really very important. And yeah, as I said before, we need to move away from this property regime that we think that we can own everything. And often the idea that we want to improve something is by extending a property regime to new kind of things. And at the moment, I'm working with a colleague through a Marie Curie framework funding on, and with Professor David Kotamasi, who is he's got an incredible background of being both microbiologist, but also a lawyer. And we are working on a project that we're trying to see how we can actually prevent from soil microbes to become patented, because we see that living beings are becoming protected through patent law, through intellectual property rights, which has a very has a lot of negative consequences, and for people getting access to to microbes, which are really very important in terms of food sovereignty and also for protecting our soils and particularly the living aspects of our soils. So we're working very much against finding a new way of how we can protect soils from, and particularly microbes from becoming propertized through intellectual property rights systems. So with the soil commons, we're really focusing on a kind of more community-based aspects of governing principles. But I would like to sort of put forward here in a very short way that if we talk about soil commons, there's still some work to be done, and that we need to move from an anthropocentric understanding of a soil common to a more ecocentric common. So seeing our community, not just a community of humans, but that we also need to extend that community to other living beings like microbes, etc. So we could go to an ecocentric approach, which I will do next. But then I will also towards the end mention something about the relational approach. So when we move from an anthropocentric to an ecocentric perspective, rights of nature is very much at the heart of that thinking. And to my knowledge, nobody has really ever done a really good study on soils and rights of nature. So I think it's there for us as a community to explore. But this idea that we actually can extend our rights-based thinking and legal personhood and having legal standing in order for you to be able to have your rights recognized is already a very old idea, actually, that comes from a very important article that was published in 1972 by Christopher Stone. And Kate already mentioned it too. Trees have be recognized, and he mentioned that trees should have legal standing, that trees should be able to represent themselves before the law if there would be any kind of interference with their legal rights. So there is a big movement, and I'm sure that most of the people here on the call will be familiar that we're trying to extend this legal personhood thinking to other phenomena in nature, and particularly around rivers. That's a really big movement. It's also part at the UN level to concepts like the Earth Charter. We also see it in constitutional law that Pachamama, Mother Earth, is being recognized in jurisdictions like in Ecuador, for example. So a lot is happening in that area, and it's something to celebrate. It's something, it's quite progressive, that we move from this very anthropocentric understanding that not just humans have rights, but also that nature has rights as well. A lot of that thinking has actually been influenced by indigenous people's worldviews and their ways of being in the world, which is again a celebration of other knowledge systems, other ways of being in this world, and a recognition that science is not just something that that happens in labs in universities, but that we have a whole community having a lot of knowledge as well. But I also would like to sort of make a point that we need to be paused a little bit here as well, and that rights of nature are not just unproblematic, and particularly from very progressive legal kind of thinking. Maybe some of you will be familiar with the idea that the rights-based discourse, and I say again, it is wonderful, but we also need to acknowledge that it's coming from a political ideology that is very embedded in a liberal idea. So when we talk about a rights-based discourse, we're thinking that we need to protect the autonomy and the freedom of individuals. So that community thinking is actually a little bit under pressure with a rights-based discourse. The second problem, I think, with rights of nature is that it's very much part of this kind of ecocentric thinking, and dichotomous thinking is never good. And I think if we replace an anthropocentric with a purely, solely ecocentric thinking, we're missing maybe the kind of relationships which are really very important. I think, in my opinion, if we want to protect our soils, is that we are all part of that same community. Will rights of nature be a paradigm shift? I think is also problematic to a certain extent, because it is an extension of the idea of legal standing for humans. And I think that we actually need to be a bit more progressive, and that we can actually do much better, and that we can be more radical in our thinking. So I just would like to put something different forward as my last slide. And all of the work that I'm doing is around developing a new legal paradigm, and I'm looking into different areas beyond the law. Some of it is coming from anthropology, where we have a whole kind of ontological or material term, sort of seeing that we can actually learn from indigenous people's worldview, how they have different relationships with nature. But also within the environmental humanities, we see that there is this idea that actually that we need to think more about the materiality of objects and of nature, and that we can actually should start thinking. And somebody mentioned as well, like, can we start thinking like a soil? Can we start behaving like a soil? Also in feminist theories, there's some really wonderful work being done around ethics of care. And I think if we start combining all these really different ways of thinking, which at the moment are often, law is often quite myopic, and we like to protect maybe some of this more progressive thinking for starting to interact with the law. But I think if we start doing that and open our legal framework to this other wonderful progressive thinking, we start to come up with a whole new kind of legal language, which is much more relational, and that would be more beneficial for our soils. And I just would like
Saskia,
to,
thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just very aware that our time, we've been running over from various different speakers. So can I just ask you to wrap up within a minute?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Last point I would like to make about biosemiotics, which is an idea that we can actually do learn from nature. And if we look into all the, for example, the language system that is, or the languages, the relations that are happening in the soils with our microbes, and that interconnectedness, that is something that we can actually translate into a legal language, which I think would be much more conducive than having a rights-based discourse. And this is where I will stop. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Saskia. And I'm so sorry to cut you off for the limited time. And I also just want to give thanks and acknowledge your input and influence in the manifesto and the language, and how we came up with certain calls and angles that we were taking. So our next speaker is someone I've been working closely with, and I'm really pleased that she's here today. Her name is Jada Martin, and Jada is an advocacy expert, and she's got a master's in fundraising and works in fundraising and advocacy. And her latest job that I had the privilege of working with her side by side has been the creation of a MOOC, a massive open online course, which she's going to share more about, as well as advocating for the earth. So welcome, Jada.
Thanks, Kate. I'm going to share my screen. Here we are. So nice to meet you all, even if for the moment in this online bubble. And thanks to the previous speakers for all the insight and references about soil protection. My name is Jada, and since 2012, I've been actively engaged in the field of external relation, at first within the World Association of Girl Guide and Girl Scout, and then in the Alliance of European Voluntary Service Organization, one of CCIVS sister networks. These two experiences let me gain skills and knowledge in the field of advocacy and lobbying. For example, I was involved in action at European institutions, jointly with different platforms such as the European Youth Forum, the European Women's Lobby, and the Center of European Volunteering. Now, I would like to hear from you. So please take your smartphones and go to www.menti.com. I'm going to copy paste the code in the chat. Okay. You will find a question. that I ask you to answer, please, in the next 2 minutes. Well, great. The first words are coming to the screen. So the idea is to create a kind of bubble of words that represent what you think is advocacy. The first word that came to your mind when I say this word. This word. Okay, great. Communication, civic participation, connection, engage, taking a stand, human rights, engaging others, connection again, linking, support, ambassador, change. Thanks a lot. Okay. So, continue with my presentation. I would like to share with you one of the definitions I like the most. Advocacy means giving a person support to have their voice heard. It's a way to help people understand their rights and to express their views. I will continue going back to the main topic of my speech, to the MOOC, Earth Advocacy and Living Soil. First of all, I would like to thank the CCIVS, especially Vicky, for having involved me in this creation, and the dreaming team I work with. So Kate, Tamas, Tommy, and Miki. Yes, you can see some screenshot of our online meetings. During the last month, especially during the last weeks, we used to meet quite often. And I want to thank you a lot because I learned from each one of you. And I think that this team was absolutely brilliant. Then I will introduce you to the MOOC. The MOOC is, again, Earth Advocacy and Living Soil. This is a course, a MOOC, an online course built for young people who want to engage with Earth advocacy while thinking about the target. We thought about people who care about nature, about wildlife, and are concerned about the future of our ecosystems. People that are interested in these topics, but want to go in a step further, so gain skills and knowledge on how to advocate for the right recognition of the role of the soil and for soil protection. If I have time, I would go quickly to the MOOC that is already online. It is composed by 4 different areas, let's say, or elements. The first one is an essential knowledge about living soil, about soil biodiversity. Module 1 and 2, then the core knowledge and skills for advocacy. So learn more about the basics of advocacy. As Kate mentioned before during her presentation, we have in our hands a powerful advocacy tool that is the Soil4Life manifesto. It can be used, it needs to be used to approach different stakeholders, including decision makers. And through the Soil4Life manifesto, we can develop advocacy action that will lead to a positive change, both at a societal and a political level. As we know, living soil affects all life on Earth. It is connected to many aspects of our daily lives, so to our food, to food quality, to biodiversity, to farming, to health, and to urban expansion. Then there is the module 5, the stories from the field. We collected and best practices from all over the world. And then on the next part, in the last part, we put some practical assignment and exercise to give you confidence in starting your advocacy work for soil protection, maybe at local or at regional or a national level. CCIVS is going to share the link to enroll in the MOOC. Yes, the MOOC is waiting for you. And yes, these are the main sessions. So as I mentioned before, we tried to create a structure, a dynamic structure. For example, in the session on advocacy, you will be able to learn more about theory. But for example, in this part on self-assessment, you will have the possibility to check your previous level of understanding of the skills. So you can just move and drop the elements to have an idea about your current skills and how to improve your level of knowledge and competence. Then, for example, here in this part, you have the advocacy cycle, which is to put interactive images to let you explore and know more about, for example, the basic steps for advocating for your cause. And then, yes, just some more information about the course. The course is an open navigation course, so you can explore the lessons. So the lessons you will find in the left part of the screen, the 6 modules in any order you want. And once you complete all the course, you will earn a digital badge within CCIVS e-learning online system as a proof that you complete the course. Later on, CCIVS will share all the details. For now, thanks for your attention. I will give back the floor to Kate. And later, I think we will have the time and space to share more in groups and to share reflection and the time also in the space to ask me more information about the MOOC, about this co-creation process we just finished some days ago. Thanks again.
Thank you. That was wonderful, and it's great to know that we have access to online resources where we can read more about what we've discussed today. It's an opportunity for us to gain some knowledge and some skills on the topic. So if you have the chance to, please just register on the CCIVS e-learning platform. The details will be shared later. And yes, hoping to see many of you gaining access to that. Now we're going to go into our breakout rooms. Because of time, our time slots in the breakout rooms will have to be shortened. So Kate, we give them 15 minutes. In the breakout
I think we're going to have to do 10 minutes, Mercy.
10 minutes. Okay.
We've already reached 3. Well, it's 4:30 here. What time is it for you? We've reached 3:30. So we could probably do 10 minutes and then a very quick capture of the highlights, and then we'll do the closing.
Okay, so we're going to have 3 breakout rooms. Julia, if you could please help me share the slide on the breakout rooms.
Hi, Mercy. I'm having some trouble to share the slides, so I'm going to explain it really quickly.
Okay.
So we're going to have three breakout rooms, but how it's going to work is that one of the breakout rooms will stay in the main room. So we will have living soils with Dr. Mwatima and Kate. They will stay in the main room. There will be a breakout room called Earth Advocacy with Giada and Saskia. And then we will have a third breakout room called Environmental Action and Education with Bernard. So I'm going to open all rooms and participants will be able to select which room they want to go to. So you just need to choose which room you want to join. And then if you want to join Living Soils with Dr. Mwatima and Kate, you just have to stay in the main room. I don't know if it was clear. If it was clear, can you give me a reaction thumbs up? Okay, then I'm going to open all rooms.
Thank you, Julia.
Okay, so while people are joining the breakout rooms and choosing which room they want to go to, I believe we've just got 10 minutes. So for those of you that are staying here, just want to check that Dr. Mwatima, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you able to share your video with us?
Oh.
Otherwise, as long as we can hear you.
Yeah, better just to be with me. That way I don't have a video to share now.
Okay. So for those of you that have stayed in the room, this is just an invitation to write any questions that you have or comments in the chat. And we've got Julia also moderating the different questions that are coming in on the Facebook Live and on YouTube. So I know it's been a while back now, but Dr. Mwatima shared with us quite in depth around many different ways that we can approach soil, the political, the economical, viewing the ecosystem services that they offer us, learning to revalue those, looking at soil connected to our social networks, and then the legal issue. And then what Mwatima just managed to touch on at the end of her speech was also the emotional part of soil, and how maybe that's also a powerful way to approach advocacy and approach change. Motima, would you like to comment on that? Or I'm just waiting for questions to come in the groups, in the
Yes,
chats.
I did a very raw draft of the PowerPoint for that one. If you want me to put one on, I just don't want to dare myself in this thing of sharing the screen, because down here there's so many things, and we are the people of before computer, the BC people. I don't want to lose everything out of it, and I don't even know, take it and put it in here. But I really thought of looking soil in terms of all these other dimensions, like you have said them, the 6 of them, so that we get a clear picture of what could be done, or what is not done, or what is going on. For every level, you say what is happening, what should be happening, in terms of having a positive answer associated with that. If we have a political arena, we discuss our political issues around it, the way it is now, and what should be done to it, so that in future, this is what we can salvage on the soil, or on the soil itself. I learned that one of the emotion every time when I talk to people about using of very strong chemicals in terms of the fertilizer and pesticide, and then I pull them back depending on on their belief and say, what gave us right? These guys under the soil, they are also living. They are also beings put in our belief by the higher power, by the Almighty, by Allah. So what gave us the right to kill them? And discriminatory. And immediately you see people react on that. But without that, they did not know that they're killing anybody just because they don't see them. That doesn't give them the picture of killing in a way that we know killing means you see the body is there lying helplessly, but here you don't see it. So if we find description around that way to touch the emotions of the people, maybe that angle will also help people to think twice in terms of saving the soil, if I can put it that way there.
Thank you, Motima. I agree. I wonder if anybody in the room would like to unmute their microphone and share their opinion on this, or other strategies, or how they're feeling after hearing all these reports and states of the soil, or if you have any direct questions. Can I invite people in the room to feel welcome to unmute their mic and ask a question? I see Ashmita is wanting to speak, and also Rafat Ali. Rafat, I see your microphone is unmuted, but I'm not able to hear you. Okay, so then maybe we can just continue the discussion, Motima.
Are they hearing us?
I hope so. But perhaps, Motima, we can just continue with the discussion along the lines of living soils and why it's so important. For me, something that was mentioned is, you spoke about all these water policies and irrigation and expensive strategies that we use the minute we get this land and we stop seeing it as soil. And it's something that comes to me a lot when we talk about soil, because soil is alive, and then life as we know it needs water. And then for me, it always comes down to, I always joke about it in my workshops, that it's all about the and like all these yogis, that's so trendy now, we say and for me that organic matter is so essential. and actually addresses many of the threats to soil in a kind of all-encompassing way. Adding organic matter addresses water holding capacity. Adding organic matter can assist greatly with the biodiversity loss of the organisms. Adding organic matter can help prevent erosion. Adding organic matter can balance the nutrient cycles as well. And yeah, it seems like the solutions are quite simple to me often. And the challenge really is arriving to the heart of people.
It sounds simple, but the losing of the organic matter is also something that can really happen very quickly. And building it back, it takes quite a bit of a time. So when you open up a virgin soil, you are all very happy okay, now my productivity has increased, but we rarely think of, we are using something here. What are we adding in to keep it up? And we find ourselves sometimes with thinking of, oh, this is clever way. If we lose that, then we put a chemical fertilizer, thinking that now this is a quick fix, but that is also getting away the organic matter. We have my farm here trying to reshape it into the permaculture way. And when I have people, the other day I had guys from the FAO visiting us, and we're like, you try to find a means to keep that water. And what will keep the water is the organic matter. Then you don't have to worry about the erosion. If you have your soil and you keep your organic matter, and then the water is slowly being like sponge absorbed, and your plant is growing, then there's no issue about erosion, because you manage it within that system of itself.
Yes. And I think many teachers often talk about like planting the water or planting the rain. And that's also for me so important, because organic matter is not just the decaying organic matter that's on the ground and in the ground, but also the living organic matter of roots. And that essential relationship of photosynthesis and the soil food web that is so often forgotten when we study soil. We take all the plants out and look at soil, but you can't look at soil without looking at plants. Without, we say when you target a single thing in nature, you find it's connected to the all. That was John Moore. And I find that more and more. When I was developing the MOOC, I didn't know where to start or stop or finish. Must I teach photosynthesis? Must I teach the water cycle? Must I teach the soil food web? Should I teach? It really is a very simple and yet very complex connected thing. And the way dealing with the whole is so important, and seeing it as a whole system.
But in all corners of our lives, most of the time we miss dealing with the whole. Immediately we fix one thing. What is needed here? Irrigation, pull the pipes, push the water, dig the well, pump the water out and put it in. What is needed here is this increase in production, plant more, do this, but to sit back and think. And that is where, for me, the cause of permaculture is making a lot of sense, because you sit down under the tree and think of what is going on. If you start thinking of what is going on, you really push yourself into a status considering or even putting yourself in terms of what will this tree, what is this plant will love, where it will be able to thrive better, and for whose benefit, and for whose interest. That way, then I feel like trying to put the pieces together. I don't say that one can have to be expert in having this consolidated, but recently I got to know about project management, and we were talking about those 6 principles of how we can look into the things. And that's when I started to say, this is where I should look the soil in all its corners, and then in its totality, looking into all its corners and what it can do. And even in one corner, if you look into the environment, what are we doing in the environment, in the soil? it branches out into a lot of other sub-branches and sub-roots and put them all together and put it in an environmental perspective. And then how is environment linked with legal? How environment is now linked with economics? The things get complicated into it. But in a way, we still feel like, I still feel like soil is often, even around me here, when I talk to people, say, ah, yeah, soil, land is not necessarily soil. It creates like, honest, yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Everybody was thinking like land is soil.
Thank you, Matima. I think we can summarize by saying like, there's also a paradigm shift needed on how we view soil. But I'm going to pass to Vicky. I know we've gone over time, or to Mercy, and we're going to wrap up for the day. And yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody. Over to you.
Thank you. As Vicky prepares to speak, I'd like to ask everyone to reflect and just put a word that resonated for them in the chat. And once we're done, we can all see what everybody's word of the day is in the chat. So, welcome, Vicky.
Okay, so I'd just like to say thank you very much to all of the speakers, to the team that made this possible, and to you, the participants, for taking time to join us today. I know we went on a bit longer, sorry about that, but there was so many interesting things being said. It was very, very inspiring. There's a huge amount of information to take in. And we will be sharing all of those links with you, or the videos with you. The conference website will be updated so you can have access to the information. I really hope that you enjoyed the conference, and that you're looking forward also to the next 2 days. Tomorrow we have the Soil Land Guardians, and Thursday we have International Voluntary Service and Soil. So we've got many more interesting speakers to come. You can watch this conference again when you like on YouTube. If there's more information you'd like to go back and check on, we'll put the links in the chat, and we'll also upload this to the conference website. You can also learn more about Soil4Life and our Living Earth campaign, including information about our training courses. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up to our newsletter. If you go into our website, you can find the link. You can check out our website, ccivs.org, and please don't hesitate to drop us a message. So just to close, please remember to tune in tomorrow. Join us for the Soil Land Guardians from 13:30 Central European Time. And I'll leave you now with the words of Christina Ayala. She is the founder and co-director of Tiospe Winyamaka. This is a Lakota phrase, which means the extended family of the women of the earth. It's an Indigenous women's non-profit organization, a women-led non-profit organization from Colorado. And Christina is one of the land guardians that will be joining us tomorrow. So I let you listen to this, and here we finish. Thank you.
I think that most Indigenous people, I could be wrong, but I feel like most Indigenous people sort of speak in circles, you know, and so I would like to close this by closing the circle of what I've been trying to communicate. And that is that, okay, I will read that. It's my belief that Indigenous peoples come to this world knowing that we are of the earth, we are a part of it. And so my message for the, and my hope for the earth is that the Indigenous people, and I'm talking about of all nations, the white nation, the black nation, the red nation, the yellow nation, that we all come to realize our sameness more than any differences that the government tries to say that we have. That we all understand that we must come back together to help the earth regenerate in any way that we can. She herself knows best about how to regenerate herself, but she's probably waiting till we're all gone. but that's what I would say, that because Indigenous people are the caretakers of the 4 elements, that we all come back together for the future of the earth.
Wow. Thank you for that. You can see people's words of the day. I've seen awareness, I've seen urgency, I've seen soil is crying, soil is life. So thank you. And Kate, do you have anything to say before we close?
Just thank you and see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.